For 5 straight years, buying a home in America felt like chasing a train that never stopped accelerating. Prices went up in the pandemic. They went up when common sense said they shouldn't. But somewhere in the back half of 2025, something changed. Quietly, in city after city, the number of homes for sale started climbing. Buyers stopped showing up to open houses in droves. Sellers started cutting their asking prices. And in the industry's most closely watched national forecast, one line stood out from everything else. For the first time in years, prices in a meaningful slice of America are no longer expected to rise. They're expected to fall. According to Realtor.com's 2026 National Housing Forecast, home prices are projected to decline in 22 of the largest 100 metro areas in the country next year. Nationally, prices are still expected to inch upward, but the gain is now so small. Recent updates put it near 1.2% that it doesn't even keep pace with inflation. In real terms, the typical American home is getting cheaper. The national median sale price sits above $439,000. Home ownership has slipped to 65%, the lowest level since 2019, and the cities driving that shift down are not random. They cluster in 2 places: the Sunbelt boomtowns that soared the highest during the pandemic, and a handful of western and coastal markets where affordability finally broke. So which housing markets are on the edge of the steepest corrections? We built this list using the newest metro-level projections from Realtor.com's chief economists, cross-checked against local market data from Redfin, Zillow, and regional reporting from early and mid-2026. We're counting down from 15 to 1, ranked by projected price decline. Some names on this list will surprise you. Some, if you've been watching the housing market at all, absolutely will not. Before we reveal the biggest potential drops, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss our next deep dive into the American housing market. Let's start the countdown. We open the list somewhere nobody expects it: the Midwest. Des Moines has spent the last decade as one of the country's quiet success stories. Steady job growth, a diversified economy anchored by insurance and finance, and home values that never spiked the way Sunbelt cities did. That stability is exactly why its appearance here matters. Forecasters project a modest decline of roughly 0.9% heading into 2026, a small number on paper, but a real reversal for a market that has barely seen a down year since the last national downturn. The driver isn't collapse, it's balance finally catching up to supply. New construction in the surrounding suburbs has quietly outpaced the region's population growth, giving buyers more inventory to choose from for the first time in years. It's not a crisis, it's a market exhaling. But for a metro that built its reputation on being the safest, most boring housing market in America, even a small dip is a signal worth watching. Florida's Space Coast built its recent boom on a simple pitch: coastal living, no state income tax, and a front row seat to the launch pads of Cape Canaveral. Between 2020 and 2023, that pitch worked. New residents poured in, builders raced to keep up, and prices in Palm Bay, Melbourne, and Titusville climbed at a pace the region had never seen before. Now the region is projected to see prices slip about 1% in 2026, the mildest decline of any Florida metro on this list, but still a decline. The pattern here is the same one you'll hear repeated across nearly every Florida city in this countdown: construction that didn't stop when demand did, and skyrocketing property insurance premiums in a state that keeps getting hit by storms. Add those together, and even one of Florida's more modest markets starts to soften. Here's where the story gets interesting. Jacksonville shows up on this list of cooling markets, and in the very same forecasting season, on a separate list of the 10 best cities in the country for buyers in 2026, according to the National Association of Realtors. Both things are true at once. Jacksonville's incomes have grown faster than its home prices. Its inventory has expanded, and thousands of additional households now qualify to buy a median-priced home compared to a year ago. That's exactly why prices are projected to ease by roughly 1.4%. It isn't a market in trouble. It's a market correcting itself into balance after a pandemic-era run-up that outpaced what local paychecks could support. For sellers, that's an uncomfortable adjustment. For the buyers who got priced out years ago, it might finally be an opening. Orlando is the 4th Florida metro to appear on this countdown, and it won't be the last. Central Florida's tourism-driven economy fueled one of the state's biggest housing surges after 2020. as remote workers, retirees, and investors flooded into a region built around theme parks and year-round warm weather. Builders responded the way they did across the rest of the state, aggressively and arguably too fast. Now, forecasters expect prices around Orlando to fall by roughly 1.6% in 2026. The same forces are at work here as everywhere else in the state. A surge of new inventory hitting the market at the exact moment migration into Florida has slowed from its pandemic peak, combined with property insurance costs that have made monthly housing expenses climb even as sale prices soften. For a metro that once had buyers competing in bidding wars over theme park-adjacent subdivisions, that's a dramatic shift in leverage. Phoenix might be the single most watched correction story in the country. Between 2020 and 2023, this metro added hundreds of thousands of new residents and became a symbol of the pandemic-era migration wave. Remote workers fleeing expensive coastal cities for Arizona's sunshine and space. Builders poured concrete as fast as they could pull permits. The official 2026 forecast puts Phoenix's projected decline at 2.3%, but several local market trackers show the correction already running deeper than that, with year-over-year sale prices down closer to 4% in early 2026 and roughly 7% below the market's 2022 peak. Inventory has swelled, homes are sitting on the market far longer than they used to, and rental prices in the area have fallen even further, down nearly 7% year-over-year. Here's the twist though, Phoenix's population is still growing, with analysts projecting another 250,000 residents by the end of 2026. This isn't a market people are fleeing, it's a market that simply built more than it needed, all at once. San Francisco's story is different from every other city on this list because its problem was never overbuilding. If anything, San Francisco has spent decades building too little. Its projected 2.5% decline for 2026 comes from a completely different source: the slow, ongoing erosion of the urgency that once forced people to live minutes from a downtown tech office. Remote and hybrid work didn't just change commute patterns, it changed the calculation entirely for thousands of tech workers who once paid a premium to live near Silicon Valley headquarters. With that urgency gone, some of that premium is coming off the price tag. And because San Francisco's home values remain among the highest in the country, even a modest percentage decline translates into a genuinely large dollar amount for anyone selling this year. This is a market where affordability didn't improve because prices crashed. It's improving because the years of relentless appreciation have simply stalled out. California's capital region built its reputation as the affordable escape hatch from the Bay Area. And for years, that reputation kept demand strong even as prices climbed into the mid-500,000s and beyond. The 2026 forecast calls for prices here to fall roughly 3.3%, but the data on the ground tells a more layered story. Mid-2026 figures show Sacramento's median sale price still sitting near $585,000, with the region carrying just 2.8 months of available inventory compared to nearly 4 months nationally. That's tighter than most of the country, not looser, which is exactly why some local analysts argue Sacramento isn't crashing so much as cooling from a full sprint to a jog. What both sides agree on, the frantic bidding wars of the early 2020s are gone. Days on market are stretching out, and for the first time in years, buyers in California's capital region have room to breathe. Denver spent the better part of the last 15 years as one of the most reliably appreciating markets in the country, driven by a strong local economy, a wave of newcomers chasing mountain access and outdoor living, and persistently low inventory that kept sellers firmly in control. The 2026 forecast projects a 3.4% decline, a meaningful shift for a market that rarely sees red numbers. Local data backs up the turn. Active listings have grown. Price reductions have become far more common than they were even 2 years ago, and the number of weeks of available inventory has climbed into double digits. Some analysts are quick to point out that Denver's slowdown looks nothing like the deeper corrections happening in places like Phoenix or Austin. This isn't a market drowning in oversupply built during a speculative frenzy. It's simply a strong market losing some of its edge as buyers gain leverage they haven't had in a decade. Spokane is the most contested entry on this entire list. On paper, the metro-level forecast calls for a 3.5% decline in 2026, tying it for the 7th steepest projected drop in the country. On the ground, the picture looks almost the opposite. Local brokers reported median sale prices in the Spokane area actually rising through the first half of 2026, up over 2% year over year, with inventory still running below 6 months of supply. Technically still favorable to sellers by traditional measures. So which is it? The honest answer is that Spokane sits in a genuine gray zone. Unlike the Sunbelt markets on this list, Spokane never saw the same wave of speculative new construction, and housing permits actually declined heading into 2026, tightening long-term supply rather than flooding it. The National Association of Realtors even named Spokane one of the best opportunity markets for buyers in 2026, not because prices are collapsing, but because incomes are catching up to home values faster than almost anywhere else in the West. Whether that ends in an outright price decline or simply a long, flat plateau may not be clear until the second half of the year plays out. Back to Florida, because we're only getting started with the Sunshine State. Deltona and the Daytona Beach corridor rode the same pandemic wave as the rest of the state, pulling in buyers looking for coastal access without Miami-level price tags. That wave has officially crested. Forecasters now project a 3.6% decline here in 2026, tied for the state's third steepest drop on this list. The formula is one you've heard several times already in this countdown, and you'll hear it again before we're done. A construction boom that outran actual population growth, a slowdown in the migration that fueled the boom in the first place, and property insurance costs in coastal and hurricane-exposed counties that have climbed to some of the highest in the nation. Individually, none of those forces would be enough to tip a market. Together, they're reshaping the entire region. Tied with Deltona at a projected 3.6% decline is Tampa Bay, one of the most watched markets in the entire state and arguably the clearest example of Florida's post-pandemic correction. Tampa was one of the single biggest beneficiaries of the remote work migration wave, pulling in new residents by the tens of thousands between 2020 and 2022, and posting some of the fastest price appreciation in the country during that stretch. That kind of growth was never going to be permanent, and the region is now absorbing the correction. Builders who broke ground during the peak are delivering finished homes into a market where demand has normalized, migration into the state has slowed from its record pace, and rising insurance premiums along Florida's Gulf Coast have added hundreds of dollars to the monthly cost of owning a home, even as the sale price on paper comes down. For a metro that once symbolized the pandemic boom, Tampa is now just as clearly symbolizing the correction that followed it. Raleigh earned its reputation the hard way. Years of explosive growth fueled by the region's booming technology sector, strong job creation, and a wave of relocations from more expensive coastal cities. For a long stretch, Raleigh looked less like a mid-sized southern city and more like the next Austin. Now, the market is cooling fast enough to land at number 4 on this countdown, with a projected 3.7% decline in 2026. The natural come-down after several years of unsustainable price growth finally catching up with what local paychecks can actually support. And in an ironic twist, the same forecasting cycle that flagged Raleigh's prices for decline also named it one of the best opportunity markets in the country for 2026, precisely because income growth here has started outpacing home value growth. For sellers who bought near the peak, that's a hard pill. For everyone who got priced out during the boom, the math is finally starting to shift in their favor. Stockton earns the third spot with a projected 4.1% decline, and unlike most of the cities on this list, this isn't a fresh correction. Prices in the Stockton-Lodi region had already fallen over 3% by late 2025, meaning 2026's projected drop is a continuation of a slide that's been building for well over a year. The driver is stretched affordability colliding with persistently high borrowing costs. Stockton has long served as the release valve for buyers priced out of the Greater Bay Area, but even that role has its limits once local incomes stop keeping pace with local prices. Not every local forecast agrees on where this ends. Some regional trackers actually project a modest rebound in Stockton by late 2026, arguing the correction has already run its course and the market is stabilizing rather than continuing to fall. Whichever forecast proves right, one thing is clear. For buyers who've been priced out of California for a decade, Stockton may be one of the more interesting windows to watch this year. Now we arrive at the two cities carrying this entire national forecast, and unsurprisingly, both are in Florida. Northport, Sarasota, and Bradenton sit at number 2 with a projected decline of 8.9%, the second steepest drop of any metro area in the country and more than double the size of every other decline on this list except one. This stretch of Florida's Gulf Coast became one of the single hottest retirement and relocation destinations in America during the pandemic, pulling in waves of buyers chasing white sand beaches and a lower cost of living than Naples or Miami. Builders responded with an enormous wave of new construction that is only now fully hitting the resale market, arriving at the exact moment migration into the state has cooled and property insurance premiums along the coast have surged to some of the highest levels in the country. The result is a market absorbing years of speculative growth all at once, and buyers finally holding more negotiating power here than they've had in the better part of a decade. Number 1, by a wide margin, is Cape Coral-Fort Myers, projected to see prices fall by 10.2% in 2026, the steepest decline of any major metro area in the entire United States. If there's a single ground zero for this national correction, this is it. Cape Coral spent the pandemic years as one of the fastest growing housing markets in America, its famous canal front lots and waterfront lifestyle pulling in buyers and investors from across the country. Builders answered with one of the most aggressive construction booms in the state, carving new subdivisions out of former wetlands and farmland at a pace few regions could match. Then came the reckoning. The region took a direct hit from a major hurricane in recent years, sending property insurance premiums soaring to some of the highest in the nation. At the same time, migration into Florida slowed from its once record pace. Add in a wave of newly built homes hitting the resale market all at once, and you get the steepest price correction anywhere in the country. For a metro that came to symbolize the entire Florida boom, it's now symbolizing the correction that follows every boom eventually. Add it all up, and a clear pattern emerges. Of the 15 housing markets on this list, 8 are in Florida alone. 3 more sit in California. The rest are scattered across the interior West, and a handful of unexpected outliers in the Midwest and Southeast. Almost every one of them shares the same root cause, a period of explosive, pandemic-fueled growth, followed by a wave of new construction that finally caught up to, and in some cases overtook, actual demand. None of this means the country is heading toward a repeat of 2008. Lending standards today are far stricter, homeowner equity is near record highs, and most of these declines are measured in single digits, not double. What it does mean is that after 5 relentless years, the balance of power in the American housing market is finally shifting, city by city, toward the buyer. Nationally, prices are still expected to rise slightly in 2026, but in these 15 places, for the first time in years, the trend is running the other way. If you found this breakdown useful, subscribe for more deep dives into the housing markets shaping where Americans live next. And let us know in the comments which city on this list surprised you the most. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.